Hello, everyone. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги.
Hello, everyone. Great. I see everyone is coming
Good
in.
morning, dear colleagues.
We're going to start the consultation. Good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. For me, it's very early morning in New York City and it's dark outside still, but I think for most of you, it's the end of the day. Welcome to our second stakeholder consultation for the project Restoring Hope in Kazakhstan. My name is Mariam Marigo, and I work as a capacity building and biodiversity senior officer here in New York at UNDP within the Nature for Development Global Program of UNDP. It's a pleasure to welcome you. I see that my colleague Kanat Samarkanov is also here. So Kanat, welcome.
Здравствуйте.
And thank you for being with us. I see that you have your camera on, so you can say hello. Kanat is going to be my co-facilitator for the day. The first thing that I want to flag is a few logistic aspects, and the first one is that we have interpretation, and we have a simultaneous interpretation in Russian and English because, as you can see, I am not a Russian speaker, and most of our presenters today do not speak Russian. So thank you so much to Oksana Snidko and Yulia Shevstenko, our interpreters, for being with us today. So to activate the interpretation, you can click on the icon of the world at the bottom of the page on Zoom, and you can select the channel Russian. So I'm going to myself start the interpretation and go on the English channel. And I recommend that you stay here for the duration of the workshop. So Kanat, can you confirm that you hear me correctly in the Russian channel, please? With a thumbs up.
Yes.
Super. Excellent. So the second thing that I wanted to mention to everyone is that your microphones are muted, and they will remain muted for the duration of the presentations at least. So there is no, disturbance of the presenters. So if you do have any question, you can raise your hand and you can type your message on Zoom. I would encourage you to do so to start this workshop. But if you do have any technical issue, you can also connect with my colleague Monica Mora. Monica, thank you so much for being up very early your time also. You can reach out to Monica on monica.mora@undp.org. You can see her email on the slide. And you can also reach out to her via Zoom directly, and she will be able to help you. Please message her in English as she does not speak Russian, but it should be okay. Finally, we're happy to share with you that we have a folder where we will update all of the presentation and all of the recordings. You can access this folder anytime, and we will, add more of these presentations after today's session. So don't worry if you don't see all of the presentations yet. Monica, maybe I can ask you to drop this link in the chat for our participants to access it. Great. So I see that today we actually have a pretty big group today. I see we have 35, 36, almost 40 colleagues joining us and more connecting. So thank you everyone. And again, welcome to this workshop. Keep them coming. We will be starting slowly. So this is a pretty big group and it will take too much time for everyone to introduce themselves one by one. So I'm gonna kindly ask you to rename yourself in the chat. You can rename yourself on Zoom, and in the chat you can present yourself and say where you're coming, where you're connecting from, what is your role, and what do you work on. So please share with us a bit of your identity. This is nicer for me as the facilitator and nicer also for other colleagues to understand who is in this workshop. So since the beginning of this project, we have been working to, implement this project and prepare the consultation in close collaboration with colleagues within the UNDP country office in Kazakhstan. So the first thing I would like to do before we start is to actually ask you to turn on your camera and smile. And I'm going to take a screenshot as a group picture. So can I please ask everyone to turn on your camera? I see Anna, I see Dee, I see a couple of colleagues are turning on their camera. We are a big group, we're almost 40 people right now, so please turn on your camera if you want to be on the picture, and I will be taking a photo in 5 seconds. You have 5 seconds to turn on your camera. All right, smile everyone. 1, 2, and 3. Thank you. It would be much nicer to be in person with all of you, but listen, having a group photo even on Zoom is better than nothing. Thank you so much to all of you. All right, to officially start the project and the workshop, sorry, I am going to turn over to Katarina Wawierna. She is the resident representative at UNDP Country Office Kazakhstan, and she kindly sent us a video to start this meeting. So Monica, can we please play Katarina's recording? That would be great on the English channel.
Dear colleagues, it's an honor to be welcoming you today at the second workshop of Restoring Hope in Kazakhstan project, which aims to address data gap by leveraging ICT advances to protect, restore, and sustainably manage nature. To help protect the globally important ecosystems in Kazakhstan, UNDP, in close cooperation with the national partners, is implementing a number of biodiversity initiatives. UNDP helps conserve and sustainably use forest ecosystems by improving management approaches both within the protected area systems and in adjacent landscapes. Kazakhstan nature is not just iconic species, it underpins sustainable development and provides essential ecosystem services such as carbon storage, food, fresh water, and disaster risk reduction, enabling our existence and helping mitigate and adapt to climate change. Therefore, investing in ecosystem-based strategies which are more cost-effective and durable can bring more co-benefits than other climate adaptation strategies. Kazakhstan has ratified many of the numerous international agreements that are in place to support countries to take actions for nature, climate, and people. And today, unprecedented development of ICT and innovation can help identify where to take action to protect, restore, and sustainably manage. In this way, the Restoring Hope in Kazakhstan project will allow, together with scientists and public policy experts, to draw on the geospatial data available for Kazakhstan and the rest of the world to develop a tool for optimizing land management so we can scale up decision-making processes for conservation and sustainable development. I wish you all a very productive meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much to UNDP Country Office in Kazakhstan for their ongoing support in this project since the beginning. We're very grateful for them and for their guidance. So I see more of our colleagues have arrived. So good morning to all of you from New York. Good afternoon for most of you. I am going to ask the host to mute all of our colleagues just so there is no background noise as the presenters are speaking. I will also tell everyone again that we have interpretation in Russian and English. And if you look at your Zoom at the bottom of your screen, you can activate your interpretation. And we do have two fantastic Russian speaking interpreters with us today, if it is easier to follow than in English. And we have more colleagues joining. We're now over 40 participants here. So thank you so much for attending. All right, let's turn over to the objective and the logistics for this consultation. So again, we are having this consultation. Kazakhstan is one of the 5 pilot countries that we're working on for this project. And this consultation is actually the second round of consultation to finalize the work that we're doing around the Restoring Hope project in Kazakhstan, and ensure that the results of your great work impact positively policies on restoration. Just so we're all on the same page, and so everyone has the most recent version of the agenda, Monica, I'm gonna kindly ask you to please drop the link to the agenda in the chat so everyone has access to it. And as a reminder, you can see on the screen the objective of the project Restoring Hope in Kazakhstan. The first objective is to identify and prioritize areas where policymakers can take on restoration and can take restoration measure, to meet national biodiversity and land degradation commitment. The second objective is to review the country's strategic priority in the area of restoration. The third objective is to determine required global and national data sets to do the analysis. And then the final, maybe most important objective is to apply the principles of systematic conservation planning to achieve this vision with scientific rigor. So since this workshop is in a virtual format, again, I want to keep our time together as short and engaging as possible. I know it's Friday, end of the day on your side. So let me walk you through very quickly the structure of our project in the consultation. So as you can see on the screen, next slide, please. The project has 2 important sessions to consult stakeholders. The first consultation, for those of you who were there, was hosted on September 11, 2023. And we were able to go through, the project vision, the presentation of the first version of the restoration dossier for Kazakhstan, and then have an initial feedback session. Today, we're having the second workshop consultation, and the idea is to continue working on this restoration dossier with you. So if we go to the next slide, if you do remember in the first consultation, we presented the first version of this dossier. We had great feedback from this group. And since then, we spent some time, adjusting basically the data sets that are being used in the analysis to be able to create an updated version of this dossier. I wanted to thank Kanat, especially for liaising with all of our national experts and making sure that the national data sets that you said were important could be shared with us and could be refined and processed and could help us update our analysis on restoration for Kazakhstan. So the idea of today's consultation, as you understand, is that we are going to finalize the restoration dossier together. Again, the idea is that today we're going to present the second version of the dossier with our team of experts, including Kanat and the global science team here. In the presentation that will follow, you will see the changes that we brought to the dossier, as well as the changes in the maps. We will look specifically at the degradation map and the restoration priority maps because these are very central in this analysis. And then again, the core of this session today is to have feedback from you so we can capture your final feedback and we can make sure that we're finalizing the dossier, the restoration dossier for Kazakhstan before we send it back to you. So again, it's extremely important to have a dynamic session, and I'm hoping that everyone can participate very actively. Again, for those of you who are joining us today, I know there's often questions on whether you're going to have access to presentations. You will. And I'm going to ask actually Monica to drop the link of the folder where you're going to have all of the presentations. We will put all of the presentations and recording in this folder after the session. So if we look very briefly, thank you, Monica, at the agenda today, as you can see, we had the opening remarks from UNDP country office, and then we're now going to start into presenting the revised version of the restoration dossier for Kazakhstan. For that, I will call on my colleagues Kanat, Scott, Dee, and Oscar, and again, we'll look at the data, the maps, and the changes that we brought to this dossier. Then we'll have a live demo of the visualization tool that enable the creation of the restoration priority maps. And we will then have a group discussion on the potential use of the restoration dossier and the stakeholders that we should mobilize to make sure that the results of this project are landing into national policy. We'll end this workshop with a brief presentation from Dee Zhang on the UN Biodiversity Lab, which is a tool that I'm hoping is going to be very helpful to continue activities on restoration. So this is what we will do today. So again, just before I turn over to the next presenter, I wanted to thank very much so UNDP country office in Kazakhstan, who's been working very closely with us to start this project and to implement it throughout the year. Thank you also to the Committee for Forest and Wildlife of Kazakhstan, who has helped us, shaping the project and make sure that it is relevant for the priorities of Kazakhstan. And of course, thank you to our funder, the Secretariat of the Convention of Biological Diversity, for their support and for putting this project together with us. All right, I am now going to turn over to my colleague Hannat. We're going to start the session about the dossier. So first, Monica, we're talking about the dossier. Can we please have the link of the dossier in the chat, just to make sure that everyone has the same link? So my colleague Monica is going to drop this. So the link that you're going to have in the chat is the version of the dossier that is the most advanced. This version has been made based on the feedback that we received from you in the first consultation. That's why I say this is the second version of the dossier. In the first version that we introduced in September during the first consultation, we had an initial content, and then we updated the content based on the feedback you sent us and based on the new data sets at the national level that you sent us. This second version of the dossier was shared with you with the invitation to this workshop by Kanat. So Kanat, thank you so much for doing that. However, it's a pretty consequent document, and so I don't expect everyone to have had time to read everything in this dossier. So just to give you a little bit of context, because I guess that some of you were not there in the first workshop, this dossier was a joint effort with the national team in Kazakhstan, the CBD Secretariat, and our team. We are testing an approach to document and make available a compilation of experiences for prioritizing terrestrial areas for restoration. Such dossier aims to help countries to optimize, restoration policy target and prioritize terrestrial areas with consideration for biodiversity, climate change, and land degradation. But on top of that, it also generates a dialogue and a sustained collaboration between stakeholders of the 3 Rio Conventions, so not just the CBD, but the 3 Rio Convention and other key partners that are working in the country around restoration priority actions. So without waiting for longer, I think we can dive into, looking at the sections of the dossier that have been updated based on your feedback. And for that, I will turn over to you, Kanat. Kanat, thank you so much for all the work that you've been doing in liaising with national experts. I will give you the floor and we'll share the slides for you. Thank you.
Спасибо. Рад приветствовать всех участников данного семинара.
Thank you very much. Greetings to all the participants of the seminar. And allow me to present a brief presentation on the topic of the updated part of the content of the dossier. You see on the screen So we see that there were some updates here. This is the document that includes all of the territories, all of the areas of key biodiversity or key biodiversity areas for further decision making. So, for example, the parts regarding the documents, the program documents were updated, where there are items that concern conservation of key biodiversity areas, ecosystem restoration. So here we see the structure of the report. Some work was performed on the restoration of the ecosystems at the national level, on the regulatory and legislative acts. Geospatial data was also collected. Initially, it was the global data, and as my colleague Marian mentioned, we updated the data after we received the feedback from the participants and from the experts and specialists in the area. Here we touched upon the issues, or this data touches upon the issues on the where specifically the degraded areas are located in Kazakhstan, also the priority areas that are have potential for restoration. Moreover, how to reduce the costs, what potential is there, a climate change report, priorities on the ecosystem restoration, a comparison of the impact of restoration in the priority areas and areas of activities on restoration and rehabilitation. We're also examining recommendation on the implementations. We've also reviewed the restoration of national ecosystems and examined the major definitions of degradation, rehabilitation, and restoration. So degradation is classified based on the ecological or environmental condition, and restoration presumes achievement of a complete restoration of the and habitat and ecosystem to its natural or original state, if possible. In our project, we prefer using the word rehabilitation, where we're focused on the restoration of the function of the ecosystem. Moreover, the changes in the mapping hope. This is where we have geospatial data. We've introduced some changes, as mentioned earlier, after receiving the feedback from the specialists, from the experts. We've updated the content of the spatial maps. We've ordered the forestries boundaries here, as well as the priority areas for restoration. We've actualized the vector layers and the boundaries once again, considering new territories, and the actions on rehabilitation and restorations were also applied to the map of priorities. This is about the recommendations on implementation. We have information on who and how should be using this dossier. It was mentioned that these would be the individuals or the people that make decisions, who on the basis of this dossier can make decisions on conservation and restoration of ecosystems. After that, we've examined the issue of whether the analysis can be repeated using the updated information. With time, information gets updated, so it's the possibility of conducting this analysis has been examined. And problems that exist in the area of rehabilitation and restoration in Kazakhstan while mapping. We've also identified the individual responsible, or actually that this individual is absent for storing this data. So thank you so much. Again, thank you for your attention. We're happy to answer your questions.
Thank you so much, Kanat. And again, thank you for not only your presentation, but also all of the work around the dossier. I want to see if there is maybe one or two questions for you, Kanat, recognizing that we have a lot of presentations on the data specifically. So if you do have questions about the data, I would suggest that you hold on for now. I think there will be a lot of answers coming to you through the next presentation. But if you do have any questions around the dossier in general, please go ahead. So I'm just going to give a few seconds for colleagues to see if you have any questions. And if not, we will continue in the presentations. And I see more colleagues are joining. We're now almost 50 people in this workshop, which is great. All right, I don't see any questions at this time, which makes sense because mostly the questions, I guess, will be on the data and the maps that we have produced. So let's continue in the presentation, and let me turn over now to Scott Atkinson. Scott is one of our spatial experts, and he has been working specifically on the degradation map. So Scott is not with us because he's in Australia, and it's actually already the evening and night for him, but he sent us a recording. So Monica, let's play Scott's recording, and let's see if there are any questions after that.
Good day, everybody. Welcome to this little short presentation on mapping degradation in Kazakhstan and how we have gone about integrating both national data and global data layers to help us define the zone in Kazakhstan with which we're going to run optimizations for restoration activities in the country. We use 6 different layers, as you'll see on the slide in front of you, 3 of which are national produced data or national provided data, and 3 are global data sets. The first data set that we've used that comes from a national data source is desertification. So this data set represents areas that have been identified as having highly significant amounts of desertification occurring in them. You can see that this does cover quite a large area of the country, particularly in the north of the country as well as in the south, as well as areas around the Aral Sea. The next layer that we have nationally provided is data on soil transformations. So this data set represents areas where there's been mapped highly significant soil transformations, meaning that there have been changes either in soil loss or soil chemistry due to human actions in the area and land cover changes. The next layer we have nationally provided is a national layer on land degradation. And this represents areas that have been identified as having significant amounts of land degradation. So thinking about all these 3 different data sets, there's quite a bit of overlap between a lot of them. Degradation can encompass both desertification and changes in soil characteristics. So we use these 3 layers that have been provided to us, and we integrate them all into a single national degradation layer. On top of this, we combine several global data sets. The first of which comes from the ESA World Cover program. The World Cover is a project by the European Space Agency using Sentinel-1 and Sentinel-2 satellites data to produce annual 10-meter resolution global land cover datasets. We are interested in 2 categories of these datasets, or within the World Cover dataset. We are interested in urban areas and agricultural areas. So as I mentioned, this is a 10-meter global resolution dataset produced annually. And we are using, in this case, land cover as a proxy to help us identify areas of outright land conversion from natural states to those that have been more human-dominated or human-modified. The two instances, the two categories we're interested in mapping, including our urban areas. You can see the image on the left. I believe this is Manhattan in New York City. There's nothing at all, completely remotely natural in that image. And this is indicative of many urban areas that we see around the globe. The image on the right is a representation of agricultural areas, and notably we exclude pastures from this because it's quite difficult sometimes from remotely sensed data to distinguish between pasture land and natural grasslands, particularly in countries with large steppe environments like Kazakhstan. So what this image on the right is showing is a coffee plantation in Colombia, and you can see that interspersed within what looks to be some natural native large trees is a coffee plantation. So while this may represent some level of land cover that exists in the area, it's not clearing per se 100%. This is a change from the natural habitat, the natural land cover that we would expect to find in those areas. And while coffee plantations may be one of not such a degrading process as compared to other types of agriculture that particularly occur on hillside areas, it is the type of changes we're hoping to map that might represent areas that would be suitable for restoration activities. The next global dataset we use comes from a group called a program called Trends Earth. It's a project by Consultation International, and it is part of a project that they've devised to map SDG indicator 15.3.1, which relates to land degradation itself. So the Trends Earth platform is a tool that operates on the QGIS software package, for those familiar with it. It essentially takes in several different land cover and productivity datasets, taking into account the NDVI, that's the Normalized Differential Vegetation Index, which is essentially a tracker of productivity, primary productivity on land. And this calculates the SDG indicator for land degradation as either representing an area is under no change, there's an improvement in the status and the state of the land, or there's a level of degradation. We've only included areas that have been mapped as degraded from the Trends Earth tool. And importantly, Trends Earth itself tracks model trends in both the performance, the state, and the trajectory of primary productivity. These are the three indicators of change in productivity. And a decline in any one of these three indicators at a particular pixel results in that pixel being mapped as degraded. The third and final global dataset that we use is an updated version of the human footprint some of you might be familiar with. This update just recently was published last week, actually, after going through review. It's a 100-meter version of the human footprint for the year 2020, I believe, and it will be able to be updated annually. For those unfamiliar with the human footprint, it is an aggregation of several inputs, human stressor datasets, things like road networks, population density, power grid infrastructure, agriculture, and it's quite useful to help us identify some of the more, or I should say, the less explicit and more cryptic forms of degradation that can result from other forms of human infrastructure, such as roadways and power infrastructure, as well as human access. So where there are roads, where there are railways, where people might be able to travel by boat, there's a human access component that can lead to degradation. in those areas. We use a value of 4 to define areas that have been mapped as human degraded. This roughly correlates to an agricultural state where agricultural productivity is occurring on the land. So we take all of these 6 layers, we sum them all up. This includes the 3 national degradation layers, the land cover layers, both urban and agriculture, changes in productivity, which is the Trans-Earth layer, as well as the human footprint layer. So this captures other types of human pressures. And we sum these all up, and the result is a map of what we're defining as areas degraded in Kazakhstan. Another way to think of this is the zone that's suitable for restoration activities. On the right, you can just see a little bit of the code that we use to run this. For those that can follow what's happening there, it's just simply saying if any one of those input data layers is mapped as degradation, then that pixel is mapped as degraded. So this is what this looks like in Kazakhstan. We've mapped it at 500 meters because Kazakhstan is a very large country. We start going too much smaller than that, we start running into issues, computational issues with computers. It's a very large problem to deal with, but you can see that roughly about 76% of the country has been mapped as degraded using the methods that we have used. So that is the end of the presentation right now. Thanks for your time, and if anybody has any comments or questions, please feel free to bring them up, or you can also email me at the email you see on your screen. Thanks for listening, and we'll speak again soon.
Thank you very much, Scott, for your presentation and for the work in this degradation map and capturing all of the feedback from colleagues. We appreciate it. I want to keep us moving because I know time is passing, and we do have another presentation on data that may be quite relevant and bring some clarity to you before we go to some Q&A. So Dee, I'm actually going to turn over to you. My colleague Dee Zhang, who is present with us today, is also another spatial data expert and has been taking care of processing all of the data that you shared with us. She has been able to work with Oscar and generate the priority restoration map. And in her presentation today, she's going to highlight basically the changes that we've had from, the first version of the dossier to the second using those new data sets. So Dee, good evening for you on the other side of the world. I hope you're doing well. Please go ahead. You have the floor for the presentation.
Thank you, Marielle. Hi, everyone. I'm Dee. I'm a spatial planning biodiversity expert with UNDP. It is a pleasure to be here and good to see you all again. During the first consultation, which is a couple months ago, we have presented all the data used to identify the restoration priority areas in Kazakhstan. And we have received many useful advice from you on what layers should be updated, other important features that we should consider into this mapping process. Thank you all, and thank you Command and Target to help reach out and collect these data. We now have integrated your suggestions with the second iteration of restoration priority map. So my presentation here is to help review the overall data structure and data used in the mapping process with a focus to highlight the updates and the new data changes in the second iteration. With that, I will start with a recap and overview of the data structure used in identify restoration priorities. We can broadly break them down into 4 groups: base map, planning features, zones, and optionally the login constraints. Each group of the data has slightly different requirements on the spatial data used. As a brief summary, the base map defines the range and scale of our planning area. Here we are doing a national scale map. So we're using official national boundary of Kazakhstan as the base map. Then planning area will be divided into a set of discrete areas. In GIS term, it equals to pixels of a raster layer, where each unit can be independently calculated and selected. In the current iteration of the map, we used 500 meter as the resolution for the map. If you still remember the ALSA map of Kazakhstan, which is 3 kilometers, this version of restoration priority map is at a much finer scale. And the next data group, our main focus today is the planning features. These are data layers that can spatially identify restoration needs as well as potential benefits. Here we are using 3 clusters, including potential benefits for biodiversity, potential benefits for climate change mitigation, as well as human well-being. Then the third data group is zones. Zones determine where the restoration action can be implemented within the country. This is also the spatial hard constraint for the analysis to select the restoration priority areas only within the zone identified. Scott just introduced the degradation area we mapped, combining both national and global data. And that degraded area is used as a zone in the analysis. And the fourth data group is optionally a lock-in constraint. By selecting an area to lock in, it ensures that the final restoration map will include these areas. And in this updated version, after a consultation with national experts and stakeholders, we didn't lock in any area for Kazakhstan here. All right, with that overview in mind, here is a full list of planning features included in the prioritization analysis to help identify where are the most important areas to restore while maximize multiple benefits in biodiversity, ecosystem services, climate change mitigation, as well as human well-being. I wouldn't go through each of the layers in detail today, as we already did that during the first round of workshop. But if you're interested to find out more details, I'm asking my colleague Monica to drop a link to the chat, which is a master sheet with the description of each planning feature layer used in the analysis, as well as the source of the data. But here in this presentation, I will highlight and introduce the layers highlighted in yellow and blue color here. Layers in blue color are the same features, but updated to the latest year. And layers in yellow color are the new features we added into this analysis. And by the fourth column in the table on my slides here, you can see that most of the data are nationally provided by the ministry and by the national experts. All right, now let's start to take a look of the updated and new planning features added into the analysis. We start with the updated tree cover layer. This is the latest data from the Committee on Forest and Wildlife. This layer includes the habitats of tree species like pine, spectral, shrub, ash, aspen, etc., as well as the important forest ecosystems. Next, we have updated the wetland layer with the latest national data to replace the previous global data used. This reflects more accurately the distribution of important wetlands in Kazakhstan. And then the next 5 layers are new features added. Those are different types of protected areas as well as areas with priority to implement ecosystem restoration. These layers include the national nature reserves, the national parks in Kazakhstan, forest reserves, forestry wildlife committee areas. So those are the forestry breeding centers, as well as the regional forest agencies. All these data are provided by Committee on Forest and Wildlife. And our last new feature added is the ecological corridors from the National Atlas of Kazakhstan. This is to take into account of the paths or corridors that are currently created for various migrating animals. So above are the updated planning features and new planning features added to guide the identification of restoration priorities. If you have any questions, please feel free to share in the chat or raise your hand. With that, thank you, and over to you, Marielle.
Thank you so much, Dee, for the presentation and for this clarity around the data. I will pause a little bit right now, and I think, Dee, we should be able to take a few questions from our participants. So if there are any questions from our colleagues, let us know. You can type the questions, and my colleague Kanat can help us translate if you're more comfortable in typing in Russian, or you can raise your hand. So I will wait a few seconds and see if anyone has questions. So I see there is one question. With apologies, I do not know how to pronounce your name, but I do see there is one question. I'm going to unmute you, and please take the floor.
Добрый день всем. Буду говорить по-русски. Мое имя Булат Исекин. Я долгое время был координатором национального...
Good afternoon, everyone. I will be speaking in Russian. I have been working for a long time helping UNC in Kazakhstan, and I was very glad to see that this kind of measures are being carried out in Kazakhstan, because we have had a lot of workshops and conferences in Kazakhstan, and just yesterday we've discussed with our colleagues from Kazakhstan that it is important to identify the priorities for the ecosystems in Central Asia, and we shouldn't be divided by national borders, because this is a unified Central Asian ecosystem, and we have been discussing with McKinsey, World Bank, UNDP, and other international organizations that the priority for the future ecosystems of Kazakhstan are the wetlands. The wetlands is the most problematic areas, such as degrading Ural, Caspian ecosystem, and other wetlands. We should have a unified vision of Kazakhstan and Central Asia, and the priority is the wetlands. I understand that the mission of your project is a bit narrow, but then maybe the name of your project should be adjusted, because you are talking about the restoration of nature in general. Maybe you should narrow down the name of the project to identify specifically the ecosystems you are planning to work with. Because we need to ensure a comprehensive approach. Otherwise, you should focus your project only on some part of the ecosystem. Thank you for attention.
Thank you very much. And this is a great comment. And I'm just going to respond before I give the floor to another colleague. Yes, this is a good point. And this is where it's really important for us to have a discussion with national experts. So we are producing this analysis that is being tested right now. And then once you have the results, you are able to use it for specific decision making and specific aspect of restoration, and specifically for some ecosystem. We wanted to have a holistic approach in this analysis for restoration, and therefore we did not focus just on one ecosystem specifically, but we agree that there are several uses and use cases for this analysis, and that's something that we're going to touch on in the second part of this workshop. So thank you so much for your comment on that. We'll definitely note it down and keep it in mind. And once the final restoration dossier is handed over to you, we're hoping that this can be used for specifically use cases as you're mentioning. There is one more question that I will take before we move on to the next presentation, and I see a hand raised. I'm going to unmute you, and please take the floor.
Да, добрый вечер. Можно тоже по-русски.
Good evening. I also would like to speak in Russian. I'm Ilya Smilyansky, and my question is as follows. We have huge areas of lands which used to be arable lands, but now they have been abandoned since 1990s, and we are talking here about millions of hectares, and this is a unique situation in the world. This is a unique reserve for large-scale restorations of grasslands, of steppe ecosystems, but I didn't see and I didn't notice that these abandoned lands are deemed as a priority, but this is a unique option for Kazakhstan as a country to preserve these areas that have already been restored naturally, and the large scale of these areas is unique in the world. Thank you for attention.
Thank you so much. That's a great comment, and I think actually that's a good transition to the next presentation that is on the restoration priority map. So let's look at that. We based on all of the data that you sent us, we were able also to have a master map, if I can say, in this restoration dossier that gives an indication of the areas that could be a priority for restoration, rehabilitation, and recovery. And this has been presented in a recording by our colleague Oscar, who is on the other side of the world also, and it's the middle of the night for him, so he sent us this recording. I think this may bring more clarity on the use of the data and the final product for this project. So Monica, over to you to play this recording, and then we'll have another round of questions before taking a little break.
Marielle, I believe this will be presented by me instead.
All right, let's do it. Okay, perfect. Do you want to go ahead, Dee?
Yes, thank you, Morel. And thanks, Monica, for sharing the screen. Hello again, everyone. So today I will help Oscar to present this idea of unpacking restoration actions into further details. But we want to start with an overview of the logic of the restoration project and how we identify the restoration priorities nationally. The restoration priority identification is structured into 6 stages to help identify ecosystem degradation status, the restoration needs, as well as the multiple potential benefits of restoration. And those factors, those elements were considered into the identification of restoration priority. Overall, the aim of these analyses are to logically add variables that are important to consider when identifying restoration priorities. After we go through these 6 steps, for an additional step 7, as highlighted in the right circle at the bottom of my slide, we have further unpacked the priority areas into 3 more detailed actions to guide the actual restore actions on the ground based on the ecosystem and the situation on the ground. Next slide, please. And the whole identification of restoration priority is guided by the systematic conservation planning theory, where we have considered a maximized utility problem to maximize the potential benefits of restoration action in biodiversity, climate change, as well as human well-being. Next slide, please. To use the SAP theory to guide this prioritization analysis, we're trying to identify action areas in the most cost-effective way, which means that we do acknowledge that there are budget limitations in conducting restoration nationally. So there are area targets set for these nature-based solutions based on the national targets and based on the actual capacity nationally to conduct these type of nature-based actions. And secondly, we only consider areas where actions are feasible. In the case of restoration projects, as introduced by Scott earlier, we have identified areas with degradation, whether it's degraded ecosystem or soil transformation. Those are areas that we should consider ecosystem restoration in priority. And we are using that degraded area as the rent for the identification of restore priorities. And thirdly, by using the maximized benefits approach, we are considering all the more than 20 planning features together that could identify potential benefits in biodiversity, climate change, and well-being. And the prioritization approach will select areas that with the maximized benefits from all these different features and elements. Next slide, please. And by maximize the benefits, we broadly group these features into 3 categories. benefits for biodiversity that include plenty features like the rare ecosystem, the threatened species, the important ecosystems like forest or key biodiversity areas. And then for the maximized benefits for climate change adaptation and mitigation, we have considered features like soil organic carbon, carbon sequestration, etc. And then for human well-being, we have considered factors like clean water provision, soil fertility, and groundwater reserves, etc. So the three heat maps you're looking at have combined all these features under this theme, and the algorithm turns to select area with the highest overlap of these benefits. Next slide, please. And with that optimization approach, the result map looks like this on the slide. So we have used the target of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, target 2 of 30% of degraded areas, and that ends up as 21.9% of national land in Kazakhstan. Those 21.9% was selected as the area in orange color on the slides. So those are the restoration priorities this analysis have selected for in this second iteration of restoration map. Next slide, please. And starting from that result, we have further unpacked this restoration action into 3 more detailed sub-actions based on the ecosystem and the land situation, because even for restoration action, there are areas with are more modified that need higher input. So by differentiating these sub-actions, it helps governments, it helps local stakeholders to take practice and to budget accordingly. And for the factors to differentiate the restoration action, we have considered 3 elements. First is the land cover. So for the land cover, land use, areas like urban areas and industrial mining areas and croplands are regarded as highly modified areas that they might be harder or impossible to fully restore to a natural state. Thus, those areas are more suitable for the recovery of functionalities instead of the original ecosystem state. Next slide, please. And then for the second factor, we have considered an index called Human Footprint Index. This can indicate where our areas have high human footprint or are more densely populated. The area with very high human footprint are also considered as hard or impossible to fully restore to natural state, as those areas are highly might be densely populated and are settlements. Next slide, please. And the third factor we considered is the climate change impacts. we have used a global data of biome transitions under climate change. This is estimated under the emission scenario of RCP 8.5. RCP 4.5. And from there, for the ecosystem that remains stable under climate change. Sorry, does someone want to ask a question?
Please go ahead. No, go ahead.
I'm sorry. If the biome is going to remain stable, we will consider restoration actions in these stable biomes can stay stable, so they are worth higher input. And then for areas that will shift under climate change impacts, those area we tends to take a more moderate practice when conducting restoration actions. Next slide, please. So based on the above three factors, we've differentiated the restoration action into restore, rehabilitate, and recover. Next slide, please. To briefly explain the definition of these three actions, restoration means returns to restore the degraded ecosystem into a condition similar to the pre-disturbance ecosystem. We're trying to restore it to a more natural state, so not only functionally recover, but also the state and the species we want to restore them as the state, the more natural state. Next slide, please. And then for ecological rehabilitation, we are repairing the land productivity or ecosystem services in relation to its functional or structural attributes. But with rehabilitate action, it's not necessarily have to be restored to its natural state or undisturbed state. The focus will be more on the actual function or ecosystem service this place can provide. The next slide, please. And the third action, ecological recovery, this is more focused on the highly modified land, acknowledging that it will be hard to restore them to its natural state. So the recovery action here is to return the usefulness of ecosystem for the provision of environmental services other than those of the original ecosystem. Next slide, please. And to differentiate these three actions, we used different spatial constraints to create the zones for these three actions. For restore, this is area with low human footprint, low human disturbance, and those ecosystems will stay stable under climate change scenario. And for rehabilitate, next slide, please. This will be ecosystem with also relatively lower human disturbance or human modification. But since the ecosystem itself will change because of climate change, so those are areas we doesn't require to restore to the natural state, but just to recover its ecosystem service and functionality. And those are areas not in agriculture, not in urban area, and will be biomes projected as changed biome under climate change. And next slide, please. Then for recover, we used a spatial constraint as high human footprint areas. Also, in terms of land cover, its current state is agriculture or urban areas that are already highly modified. So those areas will be recover the ecosystem service, but we won't aim to recover it fully to its natural state. And next slide, please. So this map on my slide is the result of the differentiation of the three sub-actions for restoration. The area in pink color is rehabilitate. It only takes a small area in Kazakhstan, so it might be invisible on this slide, but later in the interactive section, we can look into more details in the mapping, in the map platform. And then areas in yellow color are suggested for recover actions. So as mentioned, those are highly modified and are urban or agriculture areas. And then areas in blue color are for restore actions, which are areas which turns to input higher efforts to restore them into its natural state. And with that, this is an introduction of how we further unpack the restoration actions into rehabilitate, recover, and restore. Happy to take any questions. And back to you, Mariel.
Thank you, Dee, and thank you for helping Oscar on this one. It was very insightful, and I want to see with colleagues if we have any questions on the data specifically and on this particular restoration priority map. So we do have one question already, one hand raised, and then later on, Kenneth, I'm going to ask you to help me with the comments in the chat, but we do have a hand raised, so please go ahead with that first.
Да, спасибо. Я посмотрел.
Yes, thank you. I took a look at your presentation. It's an interesting approach, but I'm afraid that it is somewhat controversial because based on the UNDP report that was issued a few years ago, where they forecasted the impact of climate change on ecosystems, the area that you identified as the priority in the north of Kazakhstan is identified as the most subject to climate change.
Сегодня даже в официальном национальном сообщении.
Desertification. And so the Kazakhstan data on the climate conference shows us that there will be significant change in climate types. So there will be the process of desertification is going to be accelerated there. So none of the areas, none of the measures, as you know, that were shown. We've seen some bananas in the pictures. So it'll be difficult to do something. So we need a more integrated approach, because the systems that are more in need of preservation or conservation, restoration, such as the Balkhash Lake, is one of the largest ecosystems of the planet. It's larger than the Netherlands, Great Britain, Denmark, Switzerland, and Belgium together. And today it is under a great risk, but restoration work is possible there today. So now we're working with the international organizations in order to develop a plan that will help us to preserve this ecosystem, which contributes greatly to the global ecological sustainability and to the mitigation of climate change. So I think your approach is interesting as a local scientific approach. But scientifically, I would suggest that you revise it because it results in controversial recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you for that insight. And I think this is a comment that we have in several cases, right? We see that this map can be in conflict with another map. It is very challenging, and I'll turn over to you in a second. It is challenging to have a methodology that captures everything, recognizing that this methodology is based on the restoration priorities from the countries. So we recognize that this map can always be improved, but really where I think it can be useful, it's when we overlap it with existing other maps, and then when it comes down to decision making, right? And how to not necessarily spend all of the capacity on producing one single map that can tackle everything, but more so using it with the right stakeholders when it comes down to making decisions for a specific region. And G, I think we have a similar comment in the chat. I took the freedom to translate it very quickly, but there's a comment on the fact that Western Kazakhstan is heavily disturbed. You know, the land is disturbed by oil and the gas sector. And that is also something to take into account into restoration. So Dee, I don't know if you would like to respond something to our colleagues to this great remark.
Sure. I will start with the first question on the climate change impact. This is really good comment, and that's what we really need, actually. So it could be that the global biome change data we used is at a coarse scale and didn't map accurately of the national context in Kazakhstan. So if you have a more accurate data available, please feel free to share with us and we can refine this post hoc analysis to reflect more accurately on where the restoration actions and the rehabilitate actions should be. And then for the second question about Western Kazakhstan, I can show you more details in our next session. That Western Kazakhstan is actually mostly included in the degraded area we defined as zone. So at least the priority actions could be selected from there, as those are defined as degraded. The reason why the result might not heavily choose the western side might be because the planning features we selected are trends to maximize the potential benefits in biodiversity, climate change mitigation, like high soil carbon biomass or high carbon sequestration ability, and then for human well-being factors, like important water source and groundwater reserves, etc. So those might be the factor that driven the selection of the restoration priority, because it tends to select areas that are also important for biodiversity, important for clean water provision, etc. And those are, like in this analysis, regarded as area with higher priority, as they can bring multiple benefits and simultaneously benefit biodiversity and ecosystem service, etc. I hope that answers your question, but we can look all these maps in more detailed in the next session.
Thank you, Dee, for those responses. And we do have in the chat a recommendation to look at the climate change communication in NDC and assessments and report. In the spirit of what Dee said, though, we would need the raw data to be able to have them in the analysis. So that will be very helpful. If you can send that to us, it would be great. Kanat, I think, I mean, I do not read your message, but I'm assuming that you just say that if the data is available, you can reach out to you, either by phone or email, to share those data. Are there any other questions at this stage from our participants? We're running a little bit behind the schedule of this workshop, and I know it's the end of the day in Kazakhstan, and it's a Friday. I want to be respectful, so I might actually recommend that we move forward. And I do not see any questions right now. So Dee, unless there is a little bit of a need of a break, I think we should continue with this feedback session that we just started. And as I was mentioning, it's really important for us to get your feedback on the second version of the dossier and the analysis that we did. And so in the second part of this workshop, we want to focus specifically on getting your feedback. So we want to get your feedback on the restoration priority map, so the map that you just saw. So what has just started is exactly what we would like. So please keep the comments going. We also want to have your feedback on potential applications and uses of this analysis in Kazakhstan, and then your feedback on the key actors and stakeholders that should be involved to use the results into national policy. So what we're going to do is to use an online tool. It's called Jamboard. It's a platform that enables you to use sticky notes to comment on the question. So I'm going to ask Monica to please share the screen. Please share the link in the chat. So the link that Monica is going to drop in the chat, please click on it. It will take you to Jamboard. I'm just waiting for a second for Monica to drop the link. And once you are in the Jamboard, thank you so much, Monica. Click on the link that Monica just sent you. And once you are in the Jamboard, you will see the 3 questions. The restoration priority map, is it useful? What is missing? The application and use of the priority restoration map, and then the key stakeholders that should be involved. So I see most of you are connecting. This is the tool that we're going to use for feedback, right? So keep this tab open on your browser. Feel free to start adding comments in it. What I would like us to do is maybe to start this feedback discussion in general, and what we could do is to look specifically at the priority map more in detail, and you can maybe then ask Dee to look at this map and zoom in, zoom out in some specific region, and then get your feedback on the maps and on the dossier in general. So let's take about the next let's say 40 to 45 minutes to do this exercise. And maybe I think we start by a little demo from Oscar, specifically on the restoration map and the platform used, right? So Monica, do you want to play this recording, and then we'll back over to Dee?
Everybody, welcome back from the break. I hope you all had a good few minutes to take a breather and chat amongst yourselves, or grab a coffee. All right, so now I'm sharing my screen, which is displaying the United Nations Biodiversity Lab, or UNBL, and it's the particular workspace that we have going for Kazakhstan, which holds much of the data that we've used for the mapping restoration priorities. I'm not going to talk too much about the user interface, because at the end of today, Dijan will be showing you in more detail what the tool can do and how it can be made available for you for your work, or for you to access data sets. So I'm just going to use it primarily as a way to show you the restoration priority map. So here we have Kazakhstan, and under it we have Google Earth imagery, where you can kind of see the major arid areas in Kazakhstan, as well as the greener parts of the country around the edges here and the major lake systems. So the first layer I'll show you, this is the areas presented to you by Scott Atkinson, mapping the locations in Kazakhstan which have been degraded either by productivity, human footprint, or land cover. So it's kind of the current state of ecosystems across Kazakhstan, and also the places that we can consider as potentials for restoration. So this, as you can see, covers quite a lot of Kazakhstan, and this area is then being used to identify how much of Kazakhstan as a country would need to be restored to achieve the Global Biodiversity Framework's target of restoring 30% of degraded ecosystems, which equals the 30% target equals roughly nationally, I think 21% of Kazakhstan's land area, based on this map. So then we use the prioritizer systematic conservation planning to prioritize across Kazakhstan for this 30% of degraded areas in a way that maximizes those environmental benefits, all those biodiversity, climate, and human well-being layers. And this results in the restoration priority map. So in orange here, I'm just going to click off the degraded areas. So in orange here, this is the core output from our work so far, mapping restoration priorities in Kazakhstan. You could see much of the areas are located in the country's periphery, from the west to the north, the east, and even the south of Kazakhstan, most of the restoration priorities. This includes very large areas being mapped for restoration. And I think this brings us to our next point, that that full restoration across this full area, where you can see that many of these locations are probably really important for food security. Much of this is actually cropland under these restoration priorities, particularly in the north of Kazakhstan. It might not be fully possible to restore all of these areas, particularly because they tend to be some of the most productive lands of Kazakhstan. And I think this is where that post hoc analysis that I took you through before the break becomes really important. It's about differentiating the forms of restoration and recognizing that it doesn't always mean we're fully recovering to an original reference or pre-disturbance ecosystem. It can involve different forms of restoration. So the first layer I'm going to click on, this is what we call the sub-action mapping, and this is to map where in Kazakhstan might be suitable for full ecological restoration, restoration to the original ecosystem. And that's these blue areas you can see, and they are distributed across Kazakhstan. I'll zoom into some of them. You can see here and here. These are places which are not heavily degraded, so they still could be really restored, and they're projected to be stable climatically. But it is a fairly small part of the overall restoration map. I'm now going to click on the second form of restoration, which is rehabilitation. You might not have seen, there's not a lot of places being mapped for restoration, rehabilitation. I'll zoom into the part of the map. You can see the places in magenta here are being mapped for rehabilitation. Now, this means that the land is not too degraded, similar to full restoration. However, it is projected to change climatically from one biome to another biome. And in this case, I believe it's being projected to change from a temperate boreal forest biome into a desert semi-arid biome. So in this place, rehabilitation of ecosystem structure and function is possible. However, it might be risky to restore the original species exactly because climate change. Again, it's a fairly small part of the map. I'm going to click on the final form of restoration, which is what we call recovery, ecosystem ecological recovery. These are the yellow areas. You can see it covers really most of the priority map, including the far north of Kazakhstan, where those more productive agricultural lands are. So in this strategy, this form of restoration, we are acknowledging that the system is really a human system now. In most cases, it's now agriculture, and fully restoring these areas to the original reference ecosystem might not be possible politically, socially, economically. So in these places, which is really most of Kazakhstan's degraded areas and priorities to restore, ecological recovery of kind of improving the system. And this can mean different things. Often it would mean enhancing the vegetation structure, bringing in some native species to the area, might be the preferential strategy. So this is really interesting in Kazakhstan, that this is such an important form of restoration that we're mapping here. It's really most of the areas, but you do see some areas being mapped still for full ecological restoration as well as rehabilitation because of some of the climate risks. Okay, so if I was there live, I would be able to work with you in the room to zoom into different parts of the country, and we could look at some landscapes that you know about, and you know about the restoration potential in them. But not being there, it makes it a little bit hard. All I could really do is show you the overall map. And we're going to now be transitioning into a feedback session where it's really a critical step for us to gather your feedback about the work that went in here and the results you're seeing, to think about how they could be useful or even how they could be improved. But maybe either before or after that feedback session, it might be possible for one of my colleagues, maybe Dijan, might be able to further share this map if you'd really like to look into any particular parts of it. So I hope the session's going very well today, and it's productive and you're enjoying yourselves. Best of luck for the rest of the session.
Thank you, Oscar. And yes, indeed, maybe you can pull up the map. I don't know if some colleagues would like to zoom in or zoom out. I see that we have a couple of comments in the chat. And if colleagues wants to, elaborate a little bit more on them, feel free to. There is one comment, especially, I think, on some regions highlighted in blue, in the Atira region. It's a big territory with oil processing and oil production, and our colleague is a little bit doubtful of the full recovery potential for it. So I will say, colleagues, if you do want to zoom in or zoom out in a map, feel free to raise your hand and ask Dee to focus specifically on the region. Please guide us, because we're not expert in the geography of Kazakhstan. But over to colleagues if you want to zoom in or zoom out. And Dee, in the meantime, you can just move around a little bit. Let's see if some colleagues wants to see specific parts of the map. The idea of this session, as I was mentioning before, is to have some feedback from all our national experts on the quality of the map, on the areas, as some of you have started doing. That's very helpful for us to have some feedback on this. All right, I see additional comment, one from Anna. Can we zoom in the northeastern coast near the Caspian Sea? That's what Anna is asking. Anna, feel free to open. I think Anna is your name. I do not read Russian, but I think that's your name. If you want to open your microphone and guide us even on the Russian channel.
Добрый вечер. Просто на северо-восточном побережье.
Good evening. The thing is that the northwest coast of the Caspian Sea is the Ural region, where in oil distilleries are being built, and other enterprises of oil and chemical cycles. So I have strong doubts that these areas could be restored, because currently they are very much degraded. Yes, you have just shown this northeast Caspian coast. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. This is good feedback, and Dee, feel free to jump in. Also, you are showing us your screen, but if you have any comments to add, and then we have another hand raised. Dee, anything you want to add?
Yes, so I'm turning on the zoning area for degraded areas. So you can see this area in light brown are all mapped as degraded areas. So just as you said, those are identified as degraded, but you can see only a small area are selected as restoration priority. Perhaps one of the reason is that there are less benefit for biodiversity or other ecosystem service or other climate or carbon benefits by restoring these area, and that might be why just a small part are selected as restoration priority. And yeah, and just like you said, it might be hard to restore, and by the prioritization analysis, I think those are the area with potentially with more benefit. And I see another hand raise.
Спасибо.
Please go ahead.
Thank
Anna.
you.
I don't hear the second person who has their hand raised. I see that you're off mic.
да,
Please go ahead.
да, потому что, да, просто никто не предупредил.
Yeah, I just didn't get a warning. So do I understand correctly that the yellow part is the area that presumes only partial restoration of functions, because these are productive lands?
Yes, correct. I'm sorry, I'm trying to unmute myself. Here I can overlay this layer with the human footprint layer we used to identify human disturbance. Let me, and then you can see like why those areas are selected or not selected. So highlighted in yellow color are area with higher or very high human footprint. That means that those are yearly human settlements or more densely populated area, and those area largely overlap with recover, because recover zone are partially restore, while recognizing these are very hard to recover to its natural state.
Thanks, Dee. And I think we kind of, oops, I see a Nico for me. I think we have a similar comment-ish for in the chat. I see that there is a comment on the territory for Aral Sirdaria Basin, so I did not know where that was. I was just looking on Google Maps. This is also a basin that is degraded, but it doesn't show necessarily as such on the map. So from what I understand, it's yeah, zoom in. It's not too far from someone, Kenna, is zooming in, but Kenna, maybe you can guide us, because when she moves the screen, it moves the little circle. So feel free to maybe guide us in the region to find the Aral Sirdaria Basin.
But yeah, I just found this whiteboard function is very helpful to guide me where I should zoom in. So yeah, I think this is the area we were talking about.
I think so too. Maybe stop stop moving the screen, D, and so Kenneth can let us know exactly where it is.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kenneth. Appreciate it. And I see a hand raise also if you want to comment, and if it's around the same area, please go ahead. I'm gonna unmute you.
Да, простите, у меня просто прервался.
Yeah, I apologize. Yeah, I had an issue with the internet, so I didn't finish what I wanted to say about the northern half of Kazakhstan. There are 15 million hectares of already recovered secondary steppes or grasslands, which were quite successfully restored. The only thing that needs to be done with them is protect them from repeated destruction. Some part will be returned to cultivation, that's true, but about 10 million hectares could easily be preserved, conserved. They're not too well suited for cultivation for crops. So it should be some other level of priority, maybe, because the recovery is possible there, and it has already occurred there, in fact. And no climate change will, or at least the forecasted climate change, will result in the deterioration of the situation. On the other hand, it will in further restoration or recovery of the steppes, not their destruction. That's not so much about the Petropavlovsk or the northern Kazakhstan, but more the eastern and western territories in the northern part of the country.
Thank you for that. Do you want to, I see that you're looking around, do you want to add anything to this comment? It's important.
Yeah, this is a great comment. Do you want to get me more on where are the areas we should be looking at? I don't have more feedback. I think it's a great comment.
Непонятно, как здесь показывать.
Well, it's not clear how to show it here on this map. I could do it later. I could just draw it and send it to you, maybe.
Sounds good.
That sounds great. Thank you so much for that valuable feedback. And there is another comment in the chat that is referring to the region. Again, apologies for not knowing all of the geography, but the Kyrgyz Alato from Taraz to Merke villages. So I am not sure exactly where on the map this is, but the comment is more general, and it's about the possibility of restoring this area, recognizing that the main negative impact is pastures. And so it is not just about, restoring, but also having proper management of the restored ecosystem. So that's something I just actually put on Jamboard in terms of application and uses. It's also important to tie to, policy that are around effective management. I see 2 hand raised and 1 comment in the chat. So I'm going to unmute the first that I see with the hand raised. So go ahead, and again, apologies for not being able to pronounce the name. There you go.
Okay. Здравствуйте, уважаемые.
Greetings, dear colleagues. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you well. Thank you. Speaking about this yellow area that is filled with this yellow color, I would like to say that this territory also includes specially protected nature areas where biodiversity is preserved. And while the project is being developed, it would like to see an integrated approach. Right now, we have an interesting situation where 3 conventions are considering measures to combat land degradation, preserving biodiversity, and we have certain areas of concentration of biodiversity, forest, water ecosystems in the same yellow area that we see on the map. It seems like it may be all cultivated lands, but while we determine the priority areas, I would like to see a combined or integrated approach. And what do I mean by that? if in such a large area there will be territories that will be selected for projects, and if there will be some activities, some projects, I would like to see this combined approach, not just let's say restoring steppes or grasslands areas, but nearby there may be a body of water or a forest that is a concentration, where there is a concentration of biodiversity, higher biodiversity. So we need to pay attention to a combined, integrated approach of restoration of ecosystems and prevention of biodegradation, specifically so that there would be no land cultivation in water collection areas with certain human activities, and that so that there would be no increasing degradation, not only on small scale as we see in these maps, the 5 million, 10 million scale, but if we look in an integrated, combined manner on a larger scale. This is what I wanted to say, to turn your attention that not everything is solid in this area, and there are actually biodiversity areas, that there are special protected nature areas that also need help with preventing degradation. So that's number one. And number two, it would be great to see a long-term, large-scale monitoring in this areas, which is happening, and also retrospective monitoring in order to stop the degradation, restore the biodiversity. And I would like to wish all the participants good luck, success in this great cause of the salvation of our planet. So thank you again.
Thank you for that very insightful comments. This is really great. And what we're doing here, I think, is designing and having this tool, right? And the restoration map, the restoration priority map is one of the aspects that can be used to then implement or even just design projects at the national level and more local or regional levels, right? So recognizing that this is a tool that then needs to be used by decision makers and put into perspective with more local knowledge and probably more local actors to be able to use it in the right way in a specific location. Dee, I don't know if there's anything that you would like to add on that. This is really maybe the most important of this project, and is how you are going to use the results and the maps, right, of this project, and how you're going to be able to use that specifically for a project. So this is a very relevant comments, and it's also what we're hoping to see past this workshop. So Dee, I don't know if there is anything that you would like to add on that matter.
Yeah, I just want to say this is a great comment.
Могу добавить?
And
I add something.
Sorry. Yeah, please.
I'm gonna ask Maxud to just wait a little bit, and Dee, please go ahead, and then we'll go back to the hand raised. So please, Dee, go ahead.
Okay, so this is a great reflection. I just want to add one point, that this post hoc analysis for differentiate the restoration action into 3 categories. Also, like for further analysis, we can further unpack this with different ecosystems or with different categories. So depends on what you think might be important to consider or look into more details. We can always refine this post hoc analysis to meet the national needs based on your context. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee. All right, let's go back to our colleague that has their hand raised. Thank you for waiting. It's a little bit tricky with the interpretation. Go ahead.
Добрый день, уважаемые.
Greetings, dear participants. It was very useful to hear this information, knowing that the world community is interested in our problems, and Kazakhstan, as I understand, has been selected as a pilot country where certain activities to improve soil fertility due to climate change will be performed. I wrote the comment about the Aral and Sirdarya Basin territory. This is the area along the Sirdarya river. It is 3,000 kilometers long. The main impact here is the disappearance of the Aral Sea, which has been reduced to a minimal size. Right now, there are about 80 million cubic meters of water on in the Aral Sea left, and that's the problem. The reduction of the water resources causes a certain degradation of soils because while chasing the effective agricultural productivity, various methods were used to increase it, and these territories that were used as croplands for rice, specifically for rice crops, they were cultivated without following the specific technologies. But if we look at at this area in spring or winter, it looks like there's still snow there, but it's in fact salt. It's a salt dust. It stretches along the railroad for about 800 kilometers. So we need a single approach to this area in order to do some restoration. We need to do some analysis, some research, scientific research, in order to restore it. This is a territory between two rivers, Sirdarya and Amudarya. It used to be a prosperous area in the 60s. The rivers, the Sirdarya River and the Aral Sea began receding. So I think there is a great interest on the national level in preserving this specific area so that the population would not flee. It used to be a great sea. There used to be navigation in it. There were ships. Now there is nobody there. The population is fleeing. There were people that were more educated that they left this area. So the ones who are left are the residents who just have nowhere to go. So the help of the global community is needed in order to restore these lands. Thank you for your interest to the problems that exist on the territory of Kazakhstan. And it's a huge country, it's enormous, there are fertile lands. A lot of think about moving north, growing crops, but this territory in the south of the Aral and Sirdarya, it is an environmental disaster territory. It has been declared as such. There are various UN programs that attempt to examine this problem, but there's still no specific steps in this direction. That's it on my end. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for that very insightful comments. This is really important and very unfortunate situation in the region. And it highlights that we really need national experts to put this tool into perspective and remind us and the other expert and decision makers in the country where action is needed. And I really hope that the most degraded areas in the country that have a clear impact on people's livelihood and health, right, and development and well-being can be addressed, and that this tool can be a support for that. So thank you very much for that comments. I just added it in the Jamboard also. I'm taking a few notes as we're speaking. There is one comment in the chat saying that it would be great if the maps were made available to the participants with the accurate legends, you know, so that there is more feedback to be provided. Yes, absolutely. That's something that we're going to do after this workshop. We're going to make the link of the dossier available to all of you in a version on which you can comment or add your suggestions. And that is probably going to be a little easier for our national experts because obviously it's a little hard to see just on the screen. But the idea is that you will have maybe 1 week to revert to us. So yeah. I have a comment, D, on the chat, and maybe this is the last one before we go back to the Jamboard. There is a comment from a colleague, and the translation at least is, I would like to see a more practice-oriented tool for selecting and assessing remediation measures for impacts that cannot be avoided. And I am not sure, D, if you understand this question, or if it's maybe the translation of, Google Translation is not the best. But maybe I can ask you to help us with this comment, or the colleague can open the microphone and speak directly. I am not sure I understand the translation of this question. Go ahead.
Коллеги просят указать какой-нибудь инструмент для того, чтобы использовать его при выборе и оценке.
I was asking about an instrument to assess the remediation or restoration measures as regards the soils in terms of the impact which cannot be avoided.
Thank you, Kenneth. I see D is playing around with the different layers. D, is there, do you want to guide us through what you are doing and the layers that you're looking at?
I'm trying to see if we have already uploaded layers about soil transformation. I think I just found it. So the soil transformation was considered as an input to guide where we should place the restoration action. So these areas in yellow color are soils with more serious or heavy transformation. And I hope that information is helpful. But regarding to the more practice-oriented tool, currently this platform is for view of the input layers. And yeah, if you could help explain the need for the tool, we can provide more feedback according to that. But for now, does this layer provide helpful information for your question?
Thanks, Dee. I invite the colleague who asked the question to open the microphone and continue the discussion directly. It's often easier than writing on the chat. So if you want to take the floor, feel free to open the microphone. No, our colleague doesn't want to speak live. I am gonna try to unmute you and see if you can take the floor and explain us a little bit more what we're hoping, and if that will be helpful. I don't know if your microphone is working, but it would be great to guide Dee. She was just showing the layer for ecological transformations of soil, and hopefully this is at least helpful. Dee, I don't think we have any additional comment on that for now. So let's move on to the next comment. There is a comment to share the material by email. Yes, absolutely. We will share all of this via email. Kanat will send you an email probably early next week with all this content. And we're grateful for additional feedback. Maybe Dee, I don't think there is more questions on the map per se. But it would be helpful maybe to go back on the Jamboard for a second. And I don't know if you want to share your screen, or Monica, if you want to take over. There you go. So we have captured some feedback on the restoration priority map, if it was useful and what is missing. I'm going to share again the link in the chat if you don't have it. Monica has shared it a couple of minutes ago. This is the Jamboard where we're hoping to collect and consolidate all of your feedback. So I think we spent quite a lot of time on the restoration priority map. And if we go on the next slide, we're focusing on the applications and the uses of the priority map. So we've captured the importance to, link this priority map to also effective and proper management of areas. This idea that we need an integrated approach across the 3 Rio Convention, and use the map for a more local level, the importance of designing projects at the more local level using the map, but always with the input from more local stakeholders. We have also had a feedback on the restoration of the area near the sea. That is specifically important. And then this idea of long-term monitoring. So I wanted to see with colleagues if there is any additional potential uses or applications that you could envision of this map. Again, this Jamboard will be shared together with the restoration dossier. So if you have more ideas or interest coming in the next week, feel free to share with us. But let me see if there are any comments on applications and uses for the priority restoration map. Feel free to write in the chat or raise your hand. Or you can directly put a little sticker. Maybe you can show on the map, like, yeah, exactly. If you go on the left, you click here and you have a sticky note, and feel free to enter your comments directly in this. In addition to application and uses of the priority restoration map, it's important to understand what actors should be involved. So Dee, if we go on the next slide, actors and key stakeholders that needs to be involved in the next step. So I think one of the comments could be, local, regional stakeholders. But we're also curious to know if there is a ministry specifically that should be involved, maybe an organization working on restoration. So I would be interested in learning from our colleagues today on who should be involved. So over to the group, maybe you can help me facilitate this one too, and making sure that we have some input from colleagues. Any thoughts around which actors and stakeholders should be involved in the next steps? There are still over 40 participants in this call, and I'm sure that some of you have some thoughts. Very good. I see the Ministry of Ecology. That sounds great. Recognizing that we've been working with Ministry of Forestry closely. Any other comments? Or actor, it does not have to be an actor at the national level. It can be more local entities that you think is doing a great job on restoration and could be involved. Any last comments? Any last thoughts? The Forestry and Wildlife Committee, absolutely. All right. Well, it looks like for now, these are the main actors and stakeholders that we envision. Again, if more comes to your mind, please add them here so we make sure that they're aware of this work that we're doing, and that it can be used in the future in, using the map. So thank you very much, everyone, for your feedback on those 3 slides. That was very, very helpful. I see one last comment in the, let me try to see if I can translate that. Research institutes. Yes, absolutely. Agreed. And those I'm hoping can be mobilized as we go through the design and implementation of more local projects. I see there's also a comment for the Ministry of Industry and the Ministry of Agriculture. I think that definitely resonates. Oh, did we lose this? That definitely resonates with what has been said before and the potential conflict in between different agendas. So this is helpful. I think the comments went away, but if you want to add it again, feel free. Perfect. All right. Let's move on to the very last presentation for today. I know it's getting late in Kazakhstan, and there's still a lot of you online. Thank you for staying with us. So before we conclude that consultation, I'd like us to take a brief moment to focus on the UN Biodiversity Lab, which is the tool that Dee was presenting and using to show you the map. So the UN Biodiversity Lab, it's an online portal, it's free, and it aims to provide and facilitate access to global and national data sets, as well as analytic tools to support decision-making around biodiversity, climate change, and sustainable development. So Monica, maybe you can drop the chat. It's www.unbiodiversitylab, all in one word, .org. And so this tool has many features, but 2 specifically might be relevant in the context of this project, mainly the restoration collection and the private workspace for Kazakhstan. So Dee, for that very last presentation today, I'm going to turn over to you to present, and then we'll take a few questions.
Thank you, Marion, and hello again. Thank you for all your engagement and comments. This has been very informative and also can help us improve the analysis in this project. As demonstrated in our earlier session, we also provide you this interactive map platform to view and download all the output layers online. And that's the platform Oscar and I was using to present the result map, the UN Biodiversity Lab. So next, I will briefly introduce this UNBL platform to help you get started to navigate these spatial layers. We will start with what is UN Biodiversity Lab. UNBL is a free open source platform with best available global spatial data sets and analytical tools. It doesn't require GIS expertise to use. We created UN Biodiversity Lab to support policymakers and countries all over the world with spatial resources to access the data and use them to strengthen their capacity in conserving and sustaining nature for people, climate, and planet. The initial version of UN Biodiversity Lab was created 5 years ago, specifically to support parties in their commitments to the CBD with a focus on the 6th National Report to the Convention. UNBL has a long tradition of supporting parties in their commitments to the CBD, and as we evolve, we have integrated users and countries' needs to develop more diversified functionalities to support and adapt to national context based on countries' existing capacity and needs. As an overview, these are 6 key features in UNBL, and later we have the chance to explore many of these functionalities in greater detail, focusing on how these features can support restoration, especially our case in Kazakhstan. starting with global data. Currently, there are over 400 global data layers on biodiversity, carbon, and sustainable development. More than 70% of them are open access data that meet the standard of digital public goods, means you can freely use, download, and use them for further analysis through the UNBL platform. And then the functionality I would like to highlight is the dynamic metrics calculated for each country and places. When you click on any countries in the Place tab, the map view will zoom into this country with a left panel of summarized statistics based on 8 global indicators that include biodiversity intactness, carbon density, and time-lapse data on enhanced vegetation index, monthly fire activity, protected areas, etc. You can download these statistics for your research or reporting needs by clicking on the arrow icon, and you can select both CSV or JSON format to download. And then we have built several curated data collections to help you identify key global data to use for the questions of your study. This one is the restoration data collection we recently launched in UNBL. This provides a key global data resource for decision makers and planners to identify restoration needs and where to take actions. Here we categorized the restoration action into 3 distinct types depending on the objectives and trajectories of restored ecosystems. As on the right side of my slide, this include restore degraded natural area to more intact natural ecosystem, or improve ecosystem service of degraded modified ecosystem, as well as restore modified ecosystem to its natural state. The collection has gathered many useful global data sets on restoration, such as nature map data on areas of global significance of restoration, forest landscape integrity data that identifies where forest is most intact, and then World Atlas of desertification data to identify desertification or degradation. There are also data to indicate biodiversity intactness and changes. To view this collection, you can scroll down to the homepage of UNBL with the link Monica just shared in the chat, then find the Discover section and click on Ecosystem Restoration to view this data collection. And then for national level data we used in this project, they can be viewed and managed through secured workspace on UNBL. This is another unique functionality on UNBL. We have provided the secured workspace as a space for collaboration. Any non-commercial users can apply workspaces with us and use that to upload their own data and places, and then view alongside with all the global data resource on UNBL. As we just demonstrated, we have a national workspace set up for Kazakhstan already. The workspace now provides a comprehensive resource of national data with more than 40 national spatial layers. This include all the restoration priority maps, the 3 sub-actions maps, as well as the heat maps and the input plenty features for this analysis. When you select the data tag of restoring hope, you can view all the layer listed under this project. And when you loaded the data you need, you can also easily create and style your own maps on UNBL for further use in reports, studies, or communication products. Finally, if you're interested to join this workspace and explore these layers in the interactive way, I want to highlight 2 easy steps for you to join the workspace. First, as it's a secured working environment, we would require a registration of account with UNBL, so that account could be your unique identifier for workspaces. So step 1 is to register an account with UNBL. After that, you can contact the workspace administrator, which is Target, who's also joined us today. And then you can also copy me for assistance. Then if you want a new workspace for your own study or your own work, you can also send an email to me for further instructions. With that, I hope this brief introduction is helpful, and thank you. Back to you, Marielle.
Thank you, Dee. This is really great and very interesting tool, and based on the feedback that we received from colleagues in other countries, also a very useful tool. So we're hoping that this can be of use for you. Again, Dee shared all of the steps to be able to join the workspace and to use the restoration collection. So do not hesitate to reach out to her. Maybe Dee, you can copy paste to your email in the chat, so people have it handy, and you can reach out to Dee. Let me see if there are any questions on your presentation, Dee. Any questions on the UN Biodiversity Lab at this stage? All right. It looks like we're good. Dee, thank you for dropping your message. And I just wanted to say thank you to colleagues who have shared more comments or added sticky notes in the Jamboard on the actors that should be involved. We now have quite a lot of actors that we think are relevant to implement the results of this project and use it. So thank you. And well, listen, if there is no more questions, and I think we're actually quite on time, and it is time to conclude this second consultation for the restoration project in Kazakhstan. So thank you, everyone, and clap from here, even if I'm far from you. Congratulations on finishing this workshop, and thank you so much on providing your feedback. The next steps, in terms of the next step before I close, so we're all on the same page. First, we will add all of the presentations in the folder that we shared with you. So do not worry, all of the presentations and all of the recordings will be made available before the end of the day to use. That's not a worry. Second, our team is going to take into consideration the feedback that you send us, and we will work on preparing the restoration dossier, the final version. What we will do is to work with Kanat to make sure that we can share with you the dossier and the maps, so that you have maybe a week to send us your comments. And then our team will finalize and produce the final version of the dossier, which I'm expecting will also be translated into Russian. So you can expect in a couple of weeks, a package of documents that are supporting this project. Central to it will be the restoration dossier, and we will also make sure that you have access to all of the links and the recordings from first and second consultation. So before we close, let me see if there's any final question. No, it looks like we're good. I want to thank a very big thank you. I want to give a big thank you to all of the team that has made this workshop possible. And I want to recognize specifically the leadership from UNDP Country Office in Kazakhstan, thank you for your support and leadership in this project, and specifically thank you to Mrs. Wawierna, the resident representative in Kazakhstan, for your support and for your words today. Thank you also to Talgat Takhanov, Kanat Samarkanov, Mariet Sarsembayeva, Yerasil Kalikan, Asel Nurbekova, because you followed all of the detail of the organization of this project and this workshop specifically, and we really appreciate your technical feedback and coordination role. I also want to thank our colleagues from the Committee on Forestry and Wildlife under the Ministry of Ecology and Natural Resources, and a special thanks to Daniar Turganbayev, the acting chairman of the Committee on Forestry and Wildlife, who wanted to be with us today, but could not join, unfortunately. Thank you also so much on the other side to Jamison Irvin, who created the vision for this project with her team. So I'm thinking of Enrique, Monica, Cassandra, Veronica, Lily, Maria. Thank you so much. Also a special thanks to Oscar Venter, Scott Atkinson, Dee Zhang, and Leticia Cardoso for all of your work around processing spatial data sets and make sure that you generated this wonderful analysis. And of course, last but not least, I want to thank all of you, the participants and national experts, for sharing your time. I know especially today was not easy. It's the end of the day, beginning of the weekend. So thank you so much for sharing your time and your knowledge to shape this project and make sure that we meet Kazakhstan's priorities and needs. So we'll continue to discuss with you. You can expect this email from Kanat shortly. And we really look forward to seeing how this project can be used in more regional projects and its implementation. So thank you so much. Do not hesitate to reach out to us if you have any question, and see you soon, hopefully. Thank you so much and have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.
До свидания.
Sağ olun.
Спасибо,
Спасибо, коллеги.
доброго.
Thank you, dear my colleagues.
До свидания, спасибо.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Спасибо.
До свидания. See you.
Всем доброго здоровья.
Спасибо.